You can also use a 50-50 mix. Hello everyone, my name is Adina from plantsbutbetter, and today we're talking about this beautiful Scindapsus Pictus Exotica, or silver vine, or whatever you want to call it. I like this plant because this is super inexpensive for a silver plant. It is quite easy to care for, so I will give it an 8 out of 10 on our care meter, because once you get it right, this plant will become your new best friend. Let's talk about light. This Scindapsus will crave that bright indirect light. The better the light, the better the growing. And the silver variegation is even more intense if the light is right. The lack of light not only will affect the new growth, but also the roots. I tried keeping this plant in medium light as well. It didn't grow as much and the new growth was actually tiny and less variegated. But if you really want this plant and you don't have enough light, you can help it with grow lights. I tried that as well and it did grow. Moving on to watering. I water my plant maybe once a week during summer and once every 2 weeks during winter. The sign that your plant needs water is when your leaves start curling, but that can also be a sign for root rot. However, if the soil is completely dry, the chances for root rot are very low. So if you see curly leaves, it's a sign that your plant needs water. You should check the soil every time you water your Satin Pothos, because the first 3 to 4 centimeters or 2 inches should be completely dry. And that's the safest way. You will not overwater your plant. Moving on to temperature. So this plant prefers it average. I keep mine at around 23 to 24 degrees Celsius. I wish I could go higher than that, but it's not possible at the moment. Don't go lower than 15 degrees Celsius because lower temperatures favor root rot. And that's all you need to know in this segment. Let's move on to humidity. I find this plant quite friendly, so I keep mine at around 50 to 70% humidity. It's usually very adaptable, but if it lacks humidity, you will also see the leaves curling. So, curly leaves could mean a lot of things, and I know it could be confusing, but if you check the soil and if there is nothing wrong in there, it could also mean that the humidity is lower than this plant actually needs. But I think your average home humidity will do great, unless your humidity is, below 30%. And I think at that point, you would get a humidifier for yourself because that humidity is not great for humans either. Moving on to fertilizer. Once a month is great for your Scindapsus to be fertilized. I do that in growing season, and usually in the winter time I stop because winter is associated with dormancy. However, if your plant is still growing, you can still fertilize it, just a bit less often and with a more diluted solution. I use a balanced NPK ratio of 10-10-10 or 20-20-20, and yeah, my plant seems pretty happy. You can use almost anything you have in your home. If maybe your fertilizer is a bit higher in nitrogen, that's okay as well. So you don't need to worry about the NPK that much. Not with this plant anyway. What about substrate? Well, if you've seen any of my videos before, you know that I really like that lightweight substrate. And I achieve mine by combining some cocoa coir, some perlite, and some regular potting soil. And you can add as a bonus some pine bark as well. Oh yeah, I do have some pine bark in here as well, so that's very, very helpful. You can also use a 50-50 mix of cocoa coir and perlite, that's great as well. Or maybe regular potting soil with perlite. Perlite is essential for those healthy roots. Moving on to plastic versus terracotta. And actually this plant is not in terracotta, it's just a planter. This plant lives in plastic, but I thought that it will look better in terracotta for the sake of this video. I did grow them in both, so they do fantastic in both. You don't need to worry about that. But if you grow your plants in terracotta, you should check them more often because terracotta is porous, it helps the water evaporate faster, and your plants will need a bit more water than they would need in plastic. What about repotting? When is best to move your plant? A sign that your plant needs repotting is when you see yellowing leaf at the base. The plants are doing that because they lack space in there. You could see the roots taking over if you check the drainage holes. Don't repot your plant if you just got it. Wait at least 1 month, but I will talk more about that in a different video. Moving on to propagation. And I have this as an example. You can propagate your plant by cuttings. I'm using water because I'm most successful with water. So let me show you those roots. I hope they can focus. So yeah, this is ready for soil, but I will wait a bit more because right now for me is November and it's pretty cold in here, and I would want my plant to be 100% successful, so I will pot it in spring. But yeah, choose a segment that has at least one node, place it into water, and that's your safest bet. You can also propagate this by leafless node cuttings, and this is great if your plant is actually a bit leggy. So I could do that for my plant in here that grew this amazing leafless stem. Another way is by air layering. I will talk more about that in a different video, and I think that's kind of it. Those are all the accessible ways to do it at home. Moving on to pests, and fortunately I didn't have any problem with this plant whatsoever, and I'm very grateful for that. I would say that is not very susceptible to any pests. However, if I had to choose some parasites that would give me problems, I think maybe spider mites or thrips in this specific case, or maybe even mealybugs. I had problems with them on other plants, and I think they could live on this plant as well, but not for long, because if you check the plant every time you water it, you'll spot the problems in time and you'll kill those bastards really soon. So prevent greater damage by checking your plant every time you water it. And last but not least, let's move on to pets. And unfortunately, this plant is not pet friendly, so I would keep it away from any pets. And I don't think I have any other detail for you today. I think that's kind of it. You can also grow this plant on moss poles, you can grow them on walls or different support systems. And they are pretty much very friendly and they are super beautiful as well. If you have any other questions or if there is something I've missed, please let me know in the comments. And until next time, don't forget to take care of yourself and your plants.